Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Education Finance Committee meeting. I will begin with the land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and our schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, we learn, and we live. Moving on, we have an agenda in front of us. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none. We have an agenda in front of us. I need somebody to approve that agenda. A motion. Thank you, Trustee Brown. All those in favor? Thank you. We also have the meeting minutes from a week ago tonight. On June 3rd, we had an education finance meeting. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of that meeting. Thank you, Trustee Arsenault. All those in favor? Thank you. Marion Thompson Howell reminded us last November at a professional development session, the function of a budget is to record in monetary times what the realistic goals and objectives of the organization are for the next year. Trustees, in our role, we have a fiduciary duty. We are acting in the best interests of our board, of our students, our staff, our families. It is our responsibility to understand the funding model, to ask questions, and to make informed decisions. That's why we are here this evening. Before we go to Associate Director Wright, I'm going to go to Director Camille Williams-Taylor.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just wanted the opportunity to start us off in a good way in the discussion for tonight. We recognize we are at an important juncture in the school year for the work of the board. Tonight we're back at the table to build and confirm a budget for the district for 2025-2026 school year, informed by the core education funding released by the Ministry of Education in May. The budget process is a key fiduciary responsibility, as the Chair of Ed Finance has just indicated, that sits not only in the development, but also in the monitoring of the disbursement of resources to the system. DDSB trustees have been engaged in the process even prior to the release of the core education funding. In 2024, trustees set the direction for the district by passing the multi-year strategic plan with 3 key pathways: meaningful learning, connected communities, and well-being. And you have provided input and highlighted priorities to support these directions all school year long through engagements at the board table, as well as through participation in advisory and statutory committees. Last year, trustees told us that the process was not clear enough, it was complex, it was layered, and trustees found it difficult to engage meaningfully in the work at hand. We have taken that feedback to heart, and we've worked to support trustees in the process for this year. One of the things that was undertaken, which has already been referenced by the chair of the committee, was a November PD session with Marion Thompson Howell along with the finance team. The PowerPoint for that, the slides for that session were shared with all trustees yesterday again, just as a reminder of the discussion that was held. Additionally, staff met with the board chair and vice chair, as well as the chair and vice chair of Education Finance, to get feedback and advice to prepare for this year's process to ensure clarity. adding direct connections between the 2024-2025 school budget as represented in the budget booklet with financial implications sections on the board report. So I know that a number of trustees in the last couple of meetings went to that section in the board report and asked, where can we find that in the budget booklet? And we have been engaged with that all year long. Last week on June 3rd, you had a revenue presentation, which was the first education finance meeting for the year, and trustees indicated that it was helpful in understanding the revenue section, and today we are going to be talking about the expenditure commitments. We had direct engagement with trustee questions. A number of trustees have reached out directly to finance, to myself and to others to engage and clarify questions that they have in between meetings. And we're working on putting together an FAQ so that all trustees will be able to see what questions have been asked and answered in between meetings. And additionally, I know many of you have already engaged. The ministry has provided 2 venues to support trustee engagement with this process. On May 28th, the OESC Education Finance webinar was held, and a number of you participated. And Module 13 of the PD suite is also focused on education finance. We've tried to align our work here with you today with that work that is a part of the OESC modules that have been set up. I'm going to ask for somebody to advance the slide, please. Tonight, we've also provided you with a desk reference that looks like the one that's on the slides there. The desk reference is an important guide to the conversation, and it's intended to help to be a working document that supports you in the conversations that are being held today. We do recognize that even with best efforts, there's loads of information. Some of it is very complex, and what we're trying to do is demystify it. So we've provided you with a desk reference tool to help to uncomplicate the discussion and to provide you with an organized for your questions. So if you turn to the back quickly, you will see that on the back there is reference to the governance questions that were shared by Mary Ann Thompson-Howell on the left, and on the right there's space for you to jot your questions down as the presentation unfolds. At the bottom of the page, you will find that the acronyms, there are a number of acronyms that are part of the desk reference, and just to be clear so that people understand what they are defined there. Part of this is to help you to understand some of the roles, because sometimes we talk about roles being a part of delivering on the multi-year strategic plan, but if you're not a part of the operational engagement, you wouldn't know what those roles are. And so we have defined them for you. So that desk reference, as we go through, you will see that our goal here is to demonstrate how it is that we have committed to your charge, which is all resources to the desks of students. And so you will see that in the desk reference at the bottom, the students are at the center, the classroom is at the center, and all of the pieces that radiate out start in the classroom, start in the schools, and move towards the system, because we who are all engaged in the work with students recognize that in order for the things in the classroom to happen, we need to recognize that a coordination and oversight needs to also happen in other aspects of the organization. You'll notice on the desk reference as well that there are some positions are identified in red, and that is going to be spoken to through the presentation, because those are positions that are being proposed as a part of the conversation here tonight. But again, what it does is it shows you how they are situated in terms of serving students, where and how, and of course you're welcome to ask what it is that they will be doing. So if I could ask you to advance to the last slide for me before we move into the presentation. So for tonight, our goal is simply clarification and discussion. It is to engage in a presentation as to how we're proposing to go forward with a balanced budget. And those of you who are engaged in the PD with OESC, you recognize your number one fiduciary commitment is a balanced budget. We want to explore your questions for clarification and understanding, as we recognize it is a complex process. And all of the staff, you will notice the senior staff is present, and our financial and capital team is also present. And so we're happy to engage any questions that you have for clarification. Our goal also is to take trustee feedback on the proposals or on proposals for consideration. So as we come back on June 17th, our goal is to bring back any feedback, points, questions, clarification, suggestions that you will make tonight through this conversation, and then we will bring it back for the next layer of the process, which will occur next week. Thank you for your indulgence, Chair, in allowing me to open up the session, but I hope that what we're demonstrating is that we have put a lot of thought into the feedback and the direction that trustees have provided in order to set up a successful engagement for you tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Williams-Taylor. That's a good introduction to what we're going to hear tonight, because we know that staff have been very busy in the last couple of weeks, and we are eager to hear more about the budget plan. So we turn to Associate Director Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opening remarks, Director Williams-Taylor. And Chair Morton, your comment about being busy for the last couple of weeks segues nicely into this first slide. The core education funding release was much later than anticipated this year, and later than what the sector has generally seen. This is a timeline chart that is included in the budget package. The dark blue circles represent the general cycle. The gray boxes to the right indicate the timing this year. That all said, we are here this evening with a draft budget to present you, and we are quite pleased to be able to do so. I'll start off by highlighting there was a small error in the package. Appendix E was attached incorrectly, and so for those that are following digitally, we have emailed an updated copy of Appendix E, which was intended to be a continuity of board reserves and not a continuity of capital project cycle. There is a printed copy at all of your chairs. You'll note as we go through the budget this evening, there are some new positions and supports included, but in terms of what this budget does for supporting students, this budget provides continuity of service and support and an ongoing implementation of the multi-year strategic plan. We have had 3 deputations to Education Finance Committee through this process. The Special Education Advisory Committee came and made a number of requests around continuing the work of eliminating ableism and discrimination across the organization, continuing to provide pathways for students, ensuring transportation does not become a barrier to access education service, and to maintain small class placements. The Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee requested the addition of a graduation coach for Black students, and I think you'll see that the budget is responsive generally to these requests. CUPE Local 218 also came to speak to the committee on 2 occasions about maintaining the Child Care for Newcomer Canadian program, the CNC program, and I think it's important to clarify some information about the CNC program. When trustees were informed about the change in this program this past fall, you were provided with information about the change in funding contract that was recently signed. I believe that the information that was referenced in the deputation indicated that the funding for next school year is increasing and that there is no evidence of a reduction in funding. The funding that supports the CNC program runs on a different calendar year than our regular school year. The funding for the CNC program runs from beginning of April to the end of March. The program changes to the CNC program are being made for 2 reasons. Number 1, the funding is being reduced. And number 2, the funder has requested an increased focus on adult language programs. There was an increase in funding from the previous year to this year running April 2025 to March 2026. Though the program is being consolidated to one site for the next school year, it is being maintained for the next school year. Funding for the following year is being reduced by approximately $650,000, which is a reduction of more than the program currently costs to run. Maintaining the CNC program past the end of next year would limit the number of adult language classes that could be offered, which is the focus that the funder has requested. The decision, for all of the reasons highlighted in CUPE's deputation, was not an easy one, but it is in line with the direction received from our funder. As discussed at our last Education Finance Committee meeting, there are different ways of reflecting enrollment. The enrollment section included on pages 11 and 12 of your budget book, pages 14 and 15 of the Education Finance Committee package, tie into the draft enrollment projection and reference headcount. The year-over-year increase in enrollment for funding purposes, based on full-time equivalent average daily enrollment that you see on screen, is approximately 1,167 students. This enrollment growth is allowing for the district to not only maintain core education programming, but to add both school-based and central resources that support the implementation of the multi-year strategic plan. We spent quite a bit of time on changes to revenues at our last meeting, and as such, we'll not be revisiting them this evening, though if there are additional questions that come up this evening, really happy to address them. As you can see from the above table, we are projecting an increase in revenue of about $51.5 million for next year. The revenue summary is included on pages 16 and 17 of the budget book, pages 19 and 20 of tonight's package. On the screen, you'll see a summary of expenditures that is replicated from page 22 of the budget book. The bulk of the presentation this evening is going to be walking through changes to draft expenditures. We're going to be going through this in more detail in just a few slides. As you can see from the above table, increase to expenditures are proposed by the same amount as the projected revenue increase, which is leading us to a balanced budget. The budget we are presenting this evening is balanced, with expenditures matching revenues, making it compliant with legislation as well as Ministry of Education expectations. The budget was not put together without challenges, nor will we escape some of these challenges moving forward. As always, pressure is felt when preparing a budget where you know the need will never equal our available resources. This is a short highlight of some of those pressures. Enrollment growth is a positive thing in terms of growth generating additional resources with which to support students, and being able to support the growth and learning journey of more students as a district is, of course, an honor. However, accommodating that growth by planning and timing everything correctly takes a significant amount of resources to do well. The federal government sets rates for CPP and EI contributions, and they have increased steadily over the last number of years. Unfortunately, benchmark funding for staff benefits, staff statutory benefits of this nature have not seen an increase to correspond with our obligated liability. This year, for example, the increase our board is seeing for CPP and EI is about $1.7 million. We are paying about $5.5 million more this year than we did 3 years ago, with no commensurate increase to funding. This is a compounding and ongoing issue that will continue to add pressure to our budget. We continue to see the cost of software licenses and hardware increase, as well as the cost of ensuring security of private information. Special education funding continues to be an area where needs outweigh available resources. This is a consistent issue across the sector, with 71 of 72 school boards reporting deficits in special education, as does the revised estimate submission for 24-25. We have seen a steady increase in usage of sick leave since the introduction of the current sick leave plan in 2018. Average sick leave usage leveled out over the COVID years, but is on the rise again. In addition to the financial cost of backfilling staff who are absent, there is an impact in terms of consistency in the classroom, and a more significant impact when we are unable to backfill positions because there are no supply staff available. Though the ministry did increase some of the transportation benchmarks, and we are seeing an increase in funding year over year, we are currently enjoying our last year in our transportation contracts with bus operators, and based on initial discussions about renewal, We do expect to face very significant challenges in the near future. Expectations around privacy and security and increased legislated accountability are pushing infrastructure changes, which are needed to accommodate. And of course, last but not least, you are all familiar by now with the ongoing issue of the arbitrary EDC rate cap at a level far below what is required to cover the cost of land purchases. These next two slides are the net changes to staff that are included in the budget before you. More information on staffing changes can be found in a number of areas of the budget book. Page 22, page 32 and 33 on Appendix A, and pages 37, 38, and 39 on Appendix C. Some of the changes that you'll see on this slide certainly require an explanation. For example, the net reduction in secondary teachers that is reflected here. You will recall that our enrollment projections for the 24-25 school year were significantly higher than the actual number of students who attended in the fall, and that due to collective agreement language around redundancy and to ensure a continued breadth of program was available to students, we remained overstaffed, particularly in the secondary panel. This year-over-year reduction is an outcome of that correction, but rest assured, we are staffing to ensure that we meet average class size requirements, and then some. You'll notice net decreases in a few other areas as well. It is the enrollment correction that is driving the majority of these changes. We are proposing a heavy investment in EA supports this year, again for the second year in a row, as direct supports to students based on feedback we have received from schools. There are 2 new schools opening in September, and those are driving some of the additional school-based positions. Included in the draft budget are a number of central support positions as well. With the increased volume of work that accompanies system growth, as well as a focus on risk management to support increase in accountability, these positions will support schools and the system. Included in the instructions section are primarily school-based staff and resource supports. More detailed descriptions of what is included in this area are included on page 20 of the budget book, page 23 of the package this evening. We're going to see some themes as we go through the expenditure categories. We've included current year on these charts, 24-25 revised estimate expenses. So those were expenses based on the enrollment that was actually present on October 31st, not our original budget submissions, and comparing that to the projected expenses for next year. So that far right column shows the projected year-over-year difference in expenditure, which is either an increase or decrease as noted. You'll recall that there were consistent drivers of increases to revenue. You're going to see that those drivers correlate directly to increased expenditures, particularly around enrollment growth and collectively bargained increases to salaries and benefits. About $870 million of the $920 million included in this category are staffing-related costs. The remaining $50 million is summarized here, can be found broken down in a different way on page 32 of your budget book, page 35 of the package this evening. Again, just going down the lines, we explained why there appears to be a net reduction in teachers, even though there is enrollment growth this year. The year-over-year supply cost has increased significantly, and that's in response to a trend that we've seen developing. And although we have plans in place to formalize a process to support staff coming to work on average on a more frequent basis and hope to see costs stabilize in the near future, we are planning conservatively for next year. The introduction of 2 new schools is adding costs in this area as well. Costs for admin and governance, such as operating the board office, to support trustees, to support central-based staff, and expenditures, including senior board staff, their department staff, the finance area, human resources, and information technology. Eligible central staff would be receiving grid movement as well as increases in line with collectively negotiated terms. As noted, there are a few new positions being added in this budget area, as well as initiatives to support corporate records management, attendance support programs through people and culture. For your comfort, we know that the ministry has introduced new enveloping provisions for this year in the money and governance area, and we want to confirm that the enveloping limit is far in excess of what you're seeing budgeted for next year. I believe the enveloping limit for next year is about $39 million, compared with our budgeted expense of under $34 million. The transportation expense category includes costs or costs required to transport students to and from home and school, including transporting students with special needs, as well as from co-curricular activities where possible. Staff who are seconded to work with DSTS supporting student transportation, who are eligible for grid and wage increases, would of course receive those. And you'll recall that the government provided additional funding to support student transportation. As discussed at our meeting last week, the increase nets out to about 2.5% of previous year. That is slightly lower than the scheduled contract increase rate, and so we expect that our increase and our transportation allocation will be fully utilized next year. The school operations and maintenance category includes the cost of operating school facilities and includes custodial salaries and benefits and their requisite supplies. Additional staff will be included in this area to support new schools opening in September, as highlighted on that staffing slide. Again, staff included in this category who are eligible will be receiving grid movement as well as salary increases that are in line with collectively negotiated amounts. Again, you'll recall that the ministry provided increases to non-staffing benchmarks of 2% for next year. This percentage increase will be used to offset the increased cost of contract and utility rates. The other non-operating cost category includes the cost of staff seconded to partner organizations, including the Ministry of Education. Expenses in this category change as staff who are eligible for to receive grid or negotiated wage increases do so, or if the number of seconded staff change. Changes to special education expenditures budgeted for next year are highlighted on this slide and are due to a number of reasons. The special education fund is funding received for special education and must be used on special education related expenditures. The enveloping provision for special education changed last year. So the envelope for the 24-25 school year and for next year, the 25-26 school year, envelopes the funding comprehensively as opposed to enveloping individual amounts within the grant, as we had seen historically. The biggest impact we have seen with this is within the special equipment allocation, or the SIA grant. Prior to the 24-25 school year, this grant was enveloped specifically for that purpose. So when we did not spend the entirety of that grant, it was deferred to the following year. So when you look at the year-over-year expenditure, it appears as though there's a decrease in spending in this area. That is not an accurate representation. The amount that is being spent on special equipment for students with special needs is an amount similar to prior years. The remainder is being spent on other areas within this envelope, as there is no longer that enveloping restriction. There are a number of staffing changes that are driving increased costs in the special education category. The number of staff in small classes and the number of special education resources teacher is increasing. The number of education assistants is increasing as well, as I mentioned earlier. In addition to those changes, and similar to other areas, eligible staff will be receiving grid movement as well as collectively negotiated wage increases. The capital budget summary looks a little bit different because there are no variance amounts included within this area. The budgeted amounts swing for some of these areas by such a significant amount that the information, if included, would be fairly erroneous. Particularly site purchases, portable purchases and relocations, and the new construction amount have a tendency to swing fairly significantly. The school renewal and school condition improvement amounts are relatively consistent with prior year, what you see on the slide there. And included in the summary are budgeted amounts related to capital projects. Detailed information of the capital budget can be found in the quarterly construction update, which was last presented at the June 2nd Standing Committee meeting. That is the end of my presentation, Madam Chair. Happy to turn it over to you and take questions of clarification of trustees. Thanks.
Thank you, Associate Director Wright. We have a number of trustees sitting around the table. We also have 3 trustees who have joined us via Zoom. All are welcome to ask questions or provide comments. If you have a question or comment, please indicate. Trustee Brown.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just wanted to, maybe this has been done already and I didn't hear you, but on page 43, I was looking at the REP grants, and I'm noticing that, I'm assuming this is money that we would normally receive as a grant from the ministry, but it seems to me that there's a lot of programs we no longer can have because we didn't get the money for the grants. Is that correct? Or could you clarify, please?
Happy to clarify. Trustee Brown, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So there are a number of columns here. If you compare the 2024 grant to the 2025 grant, you see the variance announced. Where there is no variance, it means that there's a continuity of funding from one year to the next. Responsive education programs are intended to be short-term funded programs to target ministry initiatives. For next year, they target heavily literacy, reading, math, as well as some supports for mental health and wellness. If there is a blank amount in the 25-26 column, it means that a grant is either not forthcoming or it has not yet been announced. The Ministry of Education does regularly announce REP grants in 2 tranches. The first one is generally released with core education funding. The second tranche comes out staggered throughout the year. So depending on which grant specifically you're looking at, it either may not be there for next year or has not been announced yet.
Trustee Oldfield.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. On page, I think it's 41, page 41. I just would like some clarification. So under school office, clerical support staff permanent, since 2023-24, we've seen a decrease of, math is right, 4.5. And I'm just trying to think, because we've had schools open, and so in my mind, I would have thought that that number might have actually gone up because we've actually had sites open. So if you could maybe explain how it is that we're going down and not up.
Great question. Thanks very much, Trustee Oldfield, and through you, Madam Chair. It does look, and there is a net reduction in a number of school-based support staff areas, largely related to DDSB at home. So you'll recall that a number of years ago, DDSB at home was a very robust operation and required both administrative support in terms of principals, vice principals, and clerical support. With the steady reduction in DDSB at home, we have seen the requirement for those support positions reduced. Clerical support is also generated based on an enrollment factor and allocated to schools based on enrollment, and so there's a little bit of so that plays into it a little bit for this year, again, given the enrollment projection discrepancy last year, there's a little bit of a correction showing this year. So For the new schools that are opening, we are adding net new additional clerical staff. Where there is enrollment growth in schools that the formula supports increased staff, we are adding the staff there. But overall, some of those other changes, primarily DDSB at home, are driving that.
I also had a question, and I was going to say to you, how can we have an increase of 1,100 students but a reduction of teachers? But you must have known that I was going to ask that question because you've already provided the answer. Thank you for that. Other questions, other comments? We'll go to Trustee Edwards. Trustee Edwards.
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate the flow of the budget and the additional chart that helps a lot when trying to understand and put the numbers and the things at least together. I have a couple of questions, some a little bit more specific than others, but just something that was brought up when we had a presentation through OPSPA, through the Librarians Association, and that many of the boards are replacing their teacher librarians with librarian tech people, which basically, again, their skills sets are very different. And interesting, basically, the teacher librarian has basically a skill set that would actually help and have additional resources to support curriculum and a few other things, supports for students. Compared to a librarian technician. And I'm just wondering, we are increasing, or have we actually made a change in that as far as placing library technicians or teacher librarians?
Thanks for the question, Trustee Edwards. Through you, Madam Chair. We have not made a switch from library technicians to library technicians from teacher librarians. Our staff still are teacher librarians. I don't know if any conversations have taken place on the operations side, but happy to pass it over to Associate Director Markowski.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So in relation to your question, Trustee Edwards, I think historically teacher librarians have supported with the tech component in terms of the day-to-day operations of schools, but in relation to their specific role and how it is that they're perceived through collective agreement, there's no specific language in relation to tech requirements. The second part of your question, I think teacher librarians are instrumental in relation to teaching and learning and supporting classroom staff, in particular into the implementation of literacy practices within the classroom, and that still continues to be, I would say, one of the pivotal roles of teacher librarians. So nothing that has been kind of formalized in any process or agreement, but I think as the evolving needs of schools continues, we've also seen that in terms of their responsiveness to supporting school operations.
Trustee Edwards again.
And I appreciate that, because as said, the teacher librarian does bring a particular skill set to support basically the learning needs of students. So I appreciate that thought. The second thing I had was around the special education, and I saw there was a reduction on the paraprofessionals and stuff, and I'm just wondering about that and supporting our students. Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Trustee Edwards. Through you, Madam Chair, it does look like there's a reduction year over year in that amount. I did reference in my short presentation the enveloping provision change for SIA equipment. So that reduction looks like we are reducing the amount of spend because historically we had not fully spent that SIA amount, and because it was enveloped independent of the broader special education envelope, it needed to be spent specifically on special equipment for students with special needs. We deferred that on a regular basis and it carried forward. So we are spending the same as we have historically, or approximately the same as we have historically on SIA equipment. but we are utilizing the balance of what was previously enveloped to support other areas within special education, which we are now able to do with the new enveloping provisions.
And a supplemental, Trustee Edwards?
And again, I appreciate that. It's just with paraprofessionals, I wasn't somehow linking the two as far as that was concerned, because again, the needs of our students are increasing, and understand as far as the CF funding. The last question is more of, again, I look at the chart and so forth, and I do understand that our budget as far as has been developed to meet our strategic goals. But I'm just wondering, again, specific to ensure that, I did hear about coaches, graduation coaches for Black students, and that they are supported. But I'm just wondering some of the other initiatives that are going to continue on that are supporting that, that don't necessarily fall on a position title, and I can somewhat guess, but ensuring that some of the things that we are continuing now, that those initiatives are still continuing on in this budget.
Thanks for that, Trustee Edwards. Would love a little bit more in terms of what types of programs you're referring to, specifically in special education or programs across the district. It's pretty broad. I don't think this budget intends to reduce or remove any of the core education funded programs for next year or our initiatives. I'm sorry, if there are specific programs that you'd like me to speak to, I'd be happy to do that, but I'm drawing a blank as to what to highlight to you now.
Through you, Chair, I can pick up on the answer to that question. So A.D. Wright and I actually were in a discussion earlier today, and one of the explicit things, A.D. Wright did a lot of things today, so one of the things he did share with me is that this budget is essentially a status quo from the point of view of ensuring that we maintain a status quo level of service. Where adjustments are made, it's directly related to directions or directives that may not have been addressed in prior budgets, but our intention is to maintain a status quo level of service to students and enhancements where possible. And so that's where you will see reflected in the charts as well as on the desk resource here, that there are some enhancements that we have been able to be made to make.
Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Morton. Well, I had many questions here, but I keep crossing them off, as you have already addressed many of them in your presentation. I appreciate that. So I do have a two or three more. And the first one is around risk management. When I think of some of the boards further north, Barrie and Lindsay areas, who dealt with the ice storms this winter, and I know have to consider additional costs there to clean those things up. I just wonder what kinds of risks have we identified with our board, and what strategies do we have in place for handling those risk strategies, and maybe funds? I guess what kind of prompted my question was some of the issues that many boards around the province have been dealing with around the cybersecurity issue. So that's kind of where it came from.
Thanks very much for the question, Trustee Thatcher. Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we are constantly in risk management mode. That's kind of the nature of our business when you deal with little people on a regular basis. There are many varied risks. Enrollment is a significant risk for us. We project enrollment based on a number of inputs and factors. And as you saw for the 24 or 25 school year, we don't always get it right. And so Our ability to adapt to that reality is limited with some of the collective agreement parameters we have in place. So we spent a significant amount of time this year making sure that we had a better handle on the goings-on in the Durham region to have more confidence in our projected enrollment. Of course, there is always the potential for costs to increase in an unanticipated way. For example, transportation costs. As we exit one contract and enter into another, if in your example there is some sort of a disaster, an environmental disaster, we have a significant insurance policy that covers us, but we also keep a little bit of a contingency budget to cover some of those expenses as they arise. We have a great insurance policy, but it does have a deductible, for example, and so we do leave a little bit of room in the facility services budget, for example, to be able to accommodate that. Cybersecurity is a significant risk and something that our board is unfortunately familiar with, as are a significant number of boards in the province. The public sector is a huge target because cyber criminals have found out how to monetize our data. Since the cyber incident DDSB encountered in 2022, we have invested significantly both in time and resources, in supports and in software to protect our private sensitive data. We regularly check in with OSB, our insurer, to make sure that we are meeting their standard, and we check in with third-party experts as well to make sure that we are doing everything we can. So we do deal with risks on a regular basis. We are doing our best to mitigate. That is an ongoing process. New legislation coming into effect for next year will be addressed by a corporate records management person to ensure that we are managing all of our records appropriately. We have a policy person included in the budget for next year to make sure that our policies are transparent and accessible to members of the community, and to make sure that we have comprehensive coverage of policy and procedure, again, to help mitigate that risk. So big topic, long answer. Happy to add on to anything there if I miss something. Thanks.
Supplemental, Trustee Thatcher?
No supplemental, Chair, but I do have one more short question, if I could, at this. Thank you. The Associate Director did mention a number of additional EAs and I believe CERTs, special education resource teachers, for next year. I'm just not sure if could you just confirm the number of each, and also confirm that these are, the EAs are full-time EAs and will be working in the mainstream program, and that the special education resource teachers are also full-time.
Yeah, really happy to do that. So we have included 25 FTE EAs, so those would be full-time positions. In terms of where they'll be allocated within the system, that will be based on need and done through the ISS department in collaboration with schools. The special education resource teachers, we are adding 5 FTE for next year, if I have that correctly. And I think those were the questions. So 25 EAs and 5 CERTs.
Thank you. I think we will go to Trustee Miller, who is online. Trustee Miller?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I want to say that I appreciate the questions and the answers received so far. It has answered most of my questions, but I'm just wondering, with some of the budget reductions, are there any predictions for any impact on classroom sizes in terms of increase, or perhaps any reduction in staffing? I just want to get an idea if the budget reductions might impact those areas.
Thanks for the question, Trustee Miller. Through you, Madam Chair. We don't anticipate any increases to average class size based on the budget that we have put forth. In fact, we continue to invest in staffing above what we receive as an allocation to ensure that we meet the provincially mandated average class size caps. So we understand the importance of maintaining those caps, and we do everything we can to do so, and next year is no exception.
Trustee Oldfield?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. My question is around education development charge deficit. And I know we've had these conversations before, but I feel, and it probably isn't relevant to this current budget, but whenever I look at this, I always feel like there's this thing looming. And so my question is, it's not sustainable. And if nothing changes, how long can we maintain this? What would your best guess? I understand that it's not a absolute thing. And what happens when we can't? And I would say, we're updating the ministry regarding the growing deficit. What kind of response are we getting from the ministry about that?
That's another big topic. Really happy to answer your questions. Ultimately, the EDC deficit is not sustainable because the growth is happening now and the growth is projected to happen over the next 15 years. At some point, the growth will slow. There is such a gap between what we are allowed to charge and what we need to charge to cover that cost of land that by the time growth starts to slow, we will never recover the money. Doesn't matter how much time, we will never recover the $600 million that we are projecting in deficit over the next 15 years. The EDC deficit is not sustainable under our current borrowing model. So trustees will recall in the fall this year, we brought forth a recommendation to increase our short-term borrowing to $275 million from $175 million, solely to support the increase in EDC deficit. The EDC deficit is required to purchase land for new school development, and the line of credit is additionally used to bridge short-term capital costs in between draws from the ministry. So not sustainable because our lender has as much as told us that they are not interested in lending us more under this current model. Not sustainable because, again, ultimately, there is no way out for us. We had a real frank conversation with the Ministry of Education before we brought the proposal to trustees to increase our short-term borrowing resolution, and said that if trustees don't approve this, this may make us insolvent. We're not able to cover this amount of deficit. The ministry, of course, said we wouldn't let that happen, but there was no defined path for them to support us through that. So we continue to have conversations. As late as last week, I was in an email conversation with a senior ministry staff member highlighting that we're putting a cash flow projection for them and hope to engage in a dialogue early next year. We have room to purchase about 3 more properties with our current limit. We're going through the process right now to purchase a property that will be included in our capital priorities request when that next round is announced. So we'll know in the fairly short term how we're going to get out of this situation or be supported through this situation. We're optimistic that the ministry will see this and realize that taking on that extensive amount of debt over an extended period of time isn't ultimately sustainable. And I can't imagine what the solution might be at this point in time. You'll recall that we did share our predicament with a number of local municipalities and with MPPs. We have gained a little bit of traction from some of our municipal friends, as well as some interest from local MPPs. And so we'll continue to share our story and share our predicament and really request the Ministry of Education consider removing the EDC rate cap that's currently in place and allow us to collect the amount that we need to to purchase land to support growth, and that is the ultimate answer. I mean, the intention is that growth pays for growth in terms of infrastructure for schools, and that is not being met currently.
Trustee Cunningham is online. Trustee Cunningham, your question or comment?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thank you for this budget. I really appreciate you bringing this forward and the in-depth answers you've given to all the questions. You've touched on this a few times, so apologies to everyone that I'm still not getting it, but I'm still not quite understanding where in the budget we'll be able to deal with the transportation new contract and where additional money is supposed to come through for that. So could you possibly re-explain that to me?
Yeah, really happy to, Trustee Cunningham, through you, Madam Chair. And that's not you. I may have done a poor job of explaining it because there's a little bit of a timing delay. So the transportation funding we're receiving for next year includes an overall increase of 2.5%, which will likely support our needs through the end of next school year. Our transportation contracts are expiring as of the end of next school year, and we have started conversations about renewal of those contracts with our operators, and early indications are that that there will be a significant gap in between the current contract rate amounts that we are currently able to satisfy under our transportation funding, and what we are being asked to increase those rates to be. That gap will show up in next year. Sorry, not next year, because next year is 25-26. I'm living in between 3 different years right now. For the 26-27 school year, we will need to have new contracts in place, new transportation contracts in place. And so this time next year, included in the budget conversation, will be how we're going to support transportation. I don't have insight into that right now. We are really happy to have conversations and work with our bus operators who are, of course, facing significant challenges in their own operations to come to some reasonable solution. But I do know that school boards across the province and transportation consortia across the province are really struggling with the increase in rates as they go out and negotiate new contracts.
Further questions, further comments? Trustee Edwards.
Thank you. And again, I really do appreciate the budget, and OPSPA released a sort of a media release on spending across the province, and a particular section highlighted special education. And what it kind of brought to the attention that this board is a growing board, has a high number of students that participate in ISS services. And yet when it comes to the funding gap around special education, we are not one of the highest, excluding the Toronto District School Board. We always know as far as their gap. But it just goes to show the amount of work that we do, the amount of initiatives that we do, and how we fiscally manage this budget across the province. And so I can honestly say that, I even look at, just the administration and governance total. We are only about 3% of the budget that's spent on admin and governance. And even nonprofits, they say the standard is about, the most they should spend about 10. And here we are, at a publicly educated funding, we're only spending 3% on admin and governance. That says a lot of where we're spending our money. So again, I appreciate the amount of effort and thought and the fact that we are spending our money in the classroom, contrary to some of the other statements that have been made about boards across the province at this time. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Trustee Edwards. Moving to Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a final comment, and it's I just want to start by saying that with respect to the current climate around the province, we're seeing many boards with very large deficit budgets. Some boards are currently under investigation. We hear the term mismanagement of funds. And the ministry has set out some very clear expectations for the Board of Trustees, that they are accountable. They're accountable for the budget and for the spending. They are responsible for the oversight of the school board finances. And that it doesn't just happen in June, but the minister reminds us that this is something that needs to happen throughout the school year. So the director manages the budget and then reports regularly to the Board of Trustees. So looking ahead, I think this is something that we need to consider to regular updates to ensure financial restraint, to ensure compliance with the board. I know we do have, you did mention in the last presentation that we have reporting dates to the ministry, which perhaps can be tied in with reports to the Board of Trustees around compliance with the budget. Thank you, Chair.
If there are no other questions or comments, I have a question. And it's in regards to the temporary accommodation funding. So going from 2.6 million to 9.0 million. So we're talking about portables. I'm assuming then that portables are going to be more plentiful in the next few years than they have been in the past. Because when I visit schools in the north, one of our schools, the staff room isn't there anymore. It is a classroom for students. In another school, I go to the library, and the library is half what it used to be because half has become a student classroom. So I'm wondering, are portables more available now? Are we able to spend more money on portables? Can teachers have their staff room back? My query.
Thanks very much, Trustee Morton, and I do appreciate your advocacy for teachers on an ongoing basis. I'll give you a multi-part answer. The Financial Accountability Office produced a report this year that highlighted school utilization in Durham Region is significant. As a district, we are well in excess of 100% of our space, and so we have been required to use alternate learning spaces to be able to support student learning in schools. Certainly not ideal, but thanks to the goodwill and all the efforts of school-based staff, we're making it work. We purchased 80 portables last year and added those into the system to relieve some of that pressure. We had a significant purchase the year before, and for the next year, we have ordered 15 portables. And so continue to purchase portables to supplement the new pupil places that are coming on board over the next few years with our new schools. And we really think that over the next 3 years or so, we'll see a significant amount of that pressure relieved. That being said, if growth escalates in pace from what we've seen, I don't know that we'll get out of this situation that quickly. I'll tell you that we're kind of the envy of the province in terms of temporary accommodation funding, going from $2.5 million last year to $9 million this year. I've received a number of calls and emails from other business officials at other school boards asking how we made that happen. The reality is we spent $11 million last year and received $2.5 million, and a similar story the year before that. The funding for temporary accommodation is kind of a funny one. The ministry has for a long period of time had a $40 million pot, and they've allocated funding to school boards based on a weighted 3-year average of their spend. So the reason that we're getting the advantage, the benefit of the additional $30 million the ministry is putting in to the overall pot this year, bringing it to $70 million, is because we spent so significantly over the last few years. So Head of Facility Services, Lisa Bianca, has got an excellent plan laid out for next year to remove those alternate learning spaces as classrooms based on the enrollment projections we have and the portable inventory we have. However, if more students arrive than we anticipate to, or if there are delays in capital projects for next year, we'll have to revisit that for a short period of time. Thanks.
Thank you for that response. Seeing no further comments or questions, we thank you for your wonderful answers. We thank you for all the work that you have done. And looking at the agenda, moving on to other business. 4 trustees around the table have had a very busy, lots of fun day today. So I'm going to go to Trustee Arsenault to explain what a successful day we've had. Trustee Arsenault, you're on.
Thank you, Trustee Morton. We did have a wonderful day this afternoon at Royal Ashburn Golf Course, bringing awareness to Ignite Foundation, supporting all of the children. We had wonderful sponsors come out and learn all about our wonderful kids, all about what IDLF does for the children. At our table, thank you, Trustee Morton, we had Trustee Oldfield, we had Trustee Brown and myself. We played a fun game of golf in the afternoon, and then we spent the rest of the day telling wonderful sponsors about how wonderful the program is and how wonderful it is for the students. We talked about different programs and different initiatives that they can get involved in, so hopefully we'll see a little bit of funding through them towards our children. But overall, we had wonderful weather. We had a ton of people come out to play golf. We had lots of students, which was awesome to see. They were really, really good. Now, our trustees, we played a good game. We didn't do very well, but we had a wonderful day, and we actually won this little turkey. Each one of us got a little turkey to go home with for the most honest team because we didn't do very well. But we're going to come back next year and do better. But and hopefully next year some of you will be able to come out as well. So far in raffles, we've raised $6,500, but the numbers are still to come in from the silent auctions, from just different ticketing that they did there. It was absolutely beautiful. So when it's all wrapped up and ready to present to the board as a presentation, I hope you guys will get a chance to see some of us out there and how wonderful IDLF did on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Arsenault. We also want to say thank you to our director, Camille Williams-Taylor, and Associate Director David Wright, who joined us there at 7 a.m. for breakfast this morning. Thank you kindly. And next year, we are going to be twisting a lot more arms because we want more people to come out and join us. We will be making this an annual event. Mark my words. Is there any other business? Seeing no other business, I do want to extend a thank you to our wonderful team. You haven't said much tonight, but you've been working behind the scenes. So Lisa Bianca sitting up behind, Jennifer Mason, Melissa Durwood, over here, Kristen Talbot. We have all worked very hard. I know you have. Thank you to your entire team. If there's no other business, we will consider this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you.